Tonight on Newshour, America is once again shaken by political violence. Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist who made free speech the banner of his career, has been killed at just 31. He was shot during a university appearance in Utah, a stage symbolic of his rise. Kirk founded Turning Point USA as a teenager, taking the fight over expression on campus into the national arena. His message was simple: the First Amendment is under threat and universities have become hostile to open debate. To his allies, he was a defender of liberty, giving voice to those who felt silenced. To his critics, he was a provocateur who blurred the line between debate and disinformation. Kirk's career revealed how free speech has become one of the most contested issues in American life, a principle invoked by both sides, often to the silence of the other. His death is now sparking questions not only about political violence, but also about whether the right to speak freely can endure in such a fractured climate. Well, joining us from Washington is our correspondent to explore Kirk's legacy and its impact on America's future. US President Donald Trump addressed the nation, expressing both grief and anger. Let's just take a look at what he said.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith. And we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. Our prayers are with his wife, Erica, the two young, beloved children, and his entire family, who he loved more than anything in the world. We ask God to watch over them in this terrible hour of heartache and pain. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country. An assassin tried to silence him with a bullet, but he failed because together we will ensure that his voice, his message, and his legacy will live on for countless generations to come. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory, may God watch over his family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Okay, let's delve deeper into this topic now with our Washington correspondent, Ube Shabanda, who's joining us from Istanbul in Turkey. Ube, dark days for America, we heard there. I should say at the outset that, of course, our thoughts primarily are with Mr. Kirk's family on this very, very sad day. But I mean, what was Charlie Kirk's message? We heard there some of the sentiment from the president. Free speech was at the heart of what Mr. Kirk was putting out to the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, a dark day for millions of Americans in mourning. Charlie Kirk is a political activist and a leader of a movement that touched the hearts and minds of so many American youth, American teenagers, and university students across the country. He was someone that almost everyone in the conservative movement had either interacted with, known, that he had helped. And the sentiment across the board was that Charlie Kirk was just selfless. He was a self-made leader of Turning Point USA that grew into this massive movement across schools and universities across the country. It touched the hearts and the minds of so many Americans. And what's so shocking to the American public is the fact that someone like him, someone who wanted to engage in debates, who was a moderate, he wanted to talk to people. He was a speaker on campus universities. You know, he would go on the ground, talk to people directly. He would hold these events like the one in Utah, you know, across the country where you would have these massive crowds. And he would engage in not just in, you know, political fire throwing, but he would engage in legitimate debate with those that disagreed with him. And for someone like Charlie to be the victim of a clear political assassination is just absolutely shocking to so many people. And the sentiment amongst so many Americans is that this man, a young man, 31 years old, with a young family, with children, would then be shot by a high caliber weapon from, more than likely from, you know, someone who was trained 200 plus yards away. It is really leading to a conversation in Americans that what is happening? What is the type of rhetoric, extremist rhetoric, that would drive someone to do this against someone like Charlie Kirk, who was not a politician? He wasn't involved in politics. He was very close to President Trump, senior members of his administration, but he was also an everyman, someone that university students and teenagers, you know, across the age spectrum, you know, looked up to. Extremely popular podcast, someone that would go to the universities, engage in these debates. So there's a question in America right now, and what are we seeing the rise of left-wing extremist rhetoric that is leading to an environment that would encourage individuals to assassinate cultural and political figures like Charlie Kirk? And we heard some of that sentiment in President Trump's message, televised address to the American people in the immediate aftermath of Charlie's assassination, questioning what is the rhetoric and the political extremism that would lead people to attempt to kill President Trump in that failed Butler, Pennsylvania assassination. We saw in 2017 the attempted assassination of the House Majority Leader Scalise, and now the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. We're seeing on social media and many conservative commentators saying and wondering, were mainstream TV networks like MSNBC feeding into this frenzy, into these extremist ideologies that would then encourage someone to assassinate, take these extreme measures against those that they disagree with? And that is not part of the conversation in America. And that what is going on? Why are we seeing a slew of extremists trying to use weapons to silence their political opponents? And for someone like Charlie Kirk, who was pretty much beloved by so many Americans, even those that disagreed with him, we're seeing on social media, even those that disagreed with him in the center left, mourning his loss and his killing.
Ube, yeah, the disagreement. He did say things that were at times provocative. But is nevertheless, have we lost something in society? You know, I think back to when I was at school, and we would do simple exercises where you would have to argue the case of your opponent, put your mind inside the mind of the person that had the alternative point of view. It was a very basic exercise that all kids did, and you learnt how to argue, to go back and forth multiple times without closing a debate off or losing your temper. It was just part of normal life. Have we lost that? Is there something to do with social media, with these polarized arguments? Everything now is tribal. People trying to search out which label, which tribe do you belong to? Are we stunting our growth as a society because we haven't necessarily learned how to argue with civility?
That's a very important question. And I think the fact that we have some political commentators on, for example, Matthew Dowd, he was just fired from MSNBC for the statements that he made, essentially, praising the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're seeing on TikTok a number of clips, social media clips, praising the assassination of Charlie Kirk by those that disagreed with his center-right politics. So there is something seriously amiss in America. I had a chance to speak with Steve Bannon, a prominent American conservative commentator who has his own media network, who worked very closely with Charlie. And what he told me is, this is war. We are at war. And so many Americans in the center-right now view themselves as now being, in lack of other words, radicalized. That the attack against Charlie Kirk was an attack against many who at least sympathize with his worldview, to include those that are centrists. And, Charlie was viewed more or less as a centrist, as a moderate as well. And so the question is, and there's so many that are wondering, are we going to see more of these type of assassinations? Whereas instead of civilized debate, which Charlie engaged in, he would go to these campuses and he would have these debates that would go viral on social media with any student on any topic. But now, instead of civilized debate, instead of a back and forth, are we entering in an era where these type of killings and violence are going to become the norm? And so many American conservative commentators, so many of those that listen to Charlie's podcast are wondering, well, who's next? I mean, are they going to have to fear for their lives from now on?
I mean, it's very dramatic language. Just, your conversation with Mr. Bannon there, this is war. I mean, how on earth do we de-escalate? Do we get out of this constant escalation, this increasing polarization of these debates? Because, Ube, normal people aren't like that. Normal people have a little bit of a left-wing view on this, a little bit of a right-wing view on that, and we sort of figure it through. We're nuanced, and we have multifarious opinions on all sorts of things. But distilling everything down to, are you left or are you right? I just wonder how we're possibly going to get ourselves out of this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. For your average American, they don't affiliate themselves with one political party or another, or certainly one ideology or another. They'll have a bit of of the whole, across the political spectrum, conservative on some issues, liberal on some issues, sometimes voting Democrat, sometimes voting Republican. And, we're seeing Americans who may not have fully agreed with Charlie Kirk mourning not only his assassination as a person, but what this represents into the American political discussions, the political discourse. We are just such at a unique moment, perhaps a turning point in American history, with this assassination of Charlie Kirk. You're seeing talk of radicalization from the left. You're seeing those on the center right saying, well, this is it. We are at war. We are fighting not just a war for votes, but a war of life and death. They are after us. And perhaps Pandora's box has been opened and then it can't be closed again. But I've never seen political tensions in America at this rate. Even after the attempted assassination of President Trump, the country came back together again. But who knows what would have happened if that assassin's bullet had succeeded in killing President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. So we are truly at a dangerous crossroads in America from what I'm hearing across the political spectrum. But let there be no doubt about it, many center-right conservative Americans believe that they are also being targeted and that there is an ecosystem, an ecosystem and an echo chamber of extremist leftist ideology in the corporate media that is feeding into this hate. That is the perception there amongst Charlie Kirk's supporters. But America's is mourning. The flag isn't half-staff. President Trump this morning is attending memorials for the 9/11 terror attack. Certainly you can expect to hear more from the White House that's closely monitoring the attempt to find the shooter. The shooter, remarkably, has still not been found, the assassin of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, that is remarkable. That is remarkable that still we don't have an update on that. I mean, Mr. Kirk did have considerable achievements. The organisation Turning Point he founded when he was very young indeed. Do you think on balance that his work was more about principle or more about political strategy?
It was a combination. So Turning Point essentially was that led to a groundswell of activists, of students, getting them involved in the political process. And Charlie Kirk was instrumental in organizing young Americans to vote for President Trump in the 2016 election. So he had essentially a powerful machine that he created from the ground up that had the ability to mobilize activists to support politicians and to support President Trump's electoral win. So he would have been viewed by his opponents not as just an ideologue, but someone who was able to build a powerful grassroots organization to impact American politics. And that's why so many had hated him, who had opposed his views, because he was able to have an impact in a tangible political sense as well, not just in the media and activist sphere.
Ube, looking forward and trying to find some hope in this incredibly awful story, when we talk about democratic dialogue in the US, if it can't be found online because of this vicious polarization, if you can't debate in public settings because of the fear of political violence, then where on earth are people going to go to have these debates, these adult arguments about politics in the future?
Well, a healthy debate is really a crucial ingredient for a healthy democracy. If you don't have the ability to have free speech, whether in schools and universities or in our societies in general, if individuals cannot post what they think or say what they believe without the fear of some sort of physical retaliation or a retaliatory action that would impact their life, that ultimately degrades society's ability to live in a healthy democracy that represents the will and the view of the people. And one of the things that Charlie Kirk was remembered for is pushing for free speech in universities at times when many believe that university administrators were supporting one ideology on the left wing to attempt to silence conservative commentators and conservative students. And Charlie was viewed really as having spearheaded the ability to fight for free speech on American campuses. But going back to the issue of what happens now, if assassinations become the norm in America, the attempted killing of President Trump, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, Charlie's being viewed as a martyr by so many Americans. They're using that word. Someone who died for what he believed in, for his country. Well, now what happens if this becomes the norm? How can American democracy survive an onslaught of extremist ideology that then so readily translates to political violence? Look, Charlie Kirk had a security team. In the video, in that horrible video of Charlie's assassination, his security immediately jumped on him to try to render aid and to rush him to the hospital. But when you have a university campus with all these buildings, thousands of people, you can only secure an area so much. Charlie did not have secret service protection. He did have private security. He knew that he was targeted. In fact, many of his friends had warned him privately, well, don't you think it's a bit dangerous to hold these big events on university campuses, given that there's so many radicals that want to hurt you? But he brushed it aside. And now America is trying to reel with the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie. They're mourning, millions of Americans are mourning Charlie and his beautiful family. American politicians are having a very difficult internal discussion of how do you prevent this killing of Charlie from becoming a slippery slope that could degrade American democracy, that could lead potentially to tit-for-tat responses. And ultimately, as we heard from President Trump in his address to the American people, can commentators on TV networks, on social media, what can be done about the hate and the hate speech that built the environment that led to the assassination of Charlie? So there's just so many issues and contentions of contentious nature that Americans are dealing with today that they haven't had to deal with in a very, very long time.
No, it's a very good point you made about the commentators, Ube. I mean, the president talked about carrying Mr. Kirk's message forward. That responsibility is going to fall onto not just politicians, but a number of people, other influencers out there. How do they carry that message forward in a responsible way? And who do you think will now pick up this mantle and take Mr. Kirk's positions forward into the future?
Well, it's been remarkable to see on social media so many saying that Charlie's legacy will live on, that we will not be silenced. That is the message that I'm seeing across social media, across those that worked with Charlie, those that supported him, that there will be many Charlie Kirks to fill the void, that the assassin's bullet will ultimately not be able to silence what Charlie stood for free speech, the First Amendment, for Americans coming together to fight for what they believe in, to support family rights, to support the ability to not be censored and to organize freely in a healthy democracy. So in that sense, the assassin, while he had succeeded in tragically and horrifically killing Charlie, he may have inadvertently sparked a new movement and many more to take over Charlie Kirk's mantle. That more other Charlies are going to step in, following the killing. The question is now, but what can be done about this? We're seeing, American politicians on the right left saying that killings have no place in American politics. But, it's one thing to hear the political rhetoric, but we're seeing so many, on TikTok and other social media, celebrating the killing of Charlie Kirk, those on the left. But what can be done? There isn't really, honestly, a simple answer to this. And that's something that American politicians and American people are finding themselves having to look inwards today on. Will this be a turning point for the good, for the American democracy, or will we turn into a darker corner now that Charlie's been assassinated? And honestly, I have no good answer. It's the shock is still very much fresh, and perhaps the assassin will not be found alive, and he's still on the run. And it's clear to me that this was a professional hit job, that this wasn't just someone who had no idea what he was doing. The nature of the killing, the way that it was done. And that is really scary, because there are so many people that have that training that can conduct these type of assassinations. And even when you're prepared with security, there's only so much that can be done. But Charlie Kirk will be missed by so many Americans. What he stood for what he represented. He was just always a smiling man with a good nature. Even those that disagreed with him are in mourning in America today.
Okay, dark and very difficult days. Ube Sharbanda, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Charlie Kirk built his career around free speech, and now in death, that principle is once again on trial. His movement reshaped the political landscape, but it also exposed deep fractures in American democracy. Well, that is all for this edition of NewsHour from all of us here at A News. Thanks for being with us.